I'm going to show you now how to make a growing medium using this soil block maker. This is a very simple machine. You can see it has little 1.5 by 1.5 inch cells in this soil block maker. This is spring loaded. There's a spring here, and you fill these cells up with a soil mixture that we're going to make. And what happens is they fill up these cells, and then you push this out, and it pushes these beautiful little soil blocks out, and they have an indentation at the top, which you'll see, where you put the seed. And the beauty of soil blocks is that you don't have any plastic, and you can directly plant this block right in the garden. Okay, so let's get started with that. The soil block formula is very simple. There are variations on it. I learned this technique from a guy, Elliot Coleman, which those of you familiar with gardening probably know Elliot Coleman's name. He's a tool consultant for Johnny's Seeds in Maine, and he's written books on gardening, and he is truly a master gardener and an inventor of gardening tools. But Elliot Coleman is a big proponent of using, or he was, I'm sure if he still is, using soil blockers. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 2 parts peat moss. Okay, peat is a sterile medium from peat bogs. And peat bogs have been they've evolved over thousands and thousands of years of anaerobic breakdown of plants and animals that creates this soil medium that's absorbent of water, and it's a good soil conditioner. I'm probably going to phase this out because peat has been mined so much that it's releasing a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. So the mining of peat is contributing to climate change. So I'm going to try to find a new source of a soil conditioner and water absorber. And I think I might try a product that's made from shredded coconuts or coconut shells. Okay, but I have this peat left over, so I'm going to continue to use this. So we're going to do a formula that's 2 parts peat. Okay, and we're going to use these 5-gallon drywall buckets as our measurement medium. 2 parts peat, 1 part garden soil compost mixed, and this is the compost that we sifted earlier on. We went to the compost pile, and this is a beautiful soil medium. Okay, we're going to use that, and then we're going to do 1/2 part sand, which is fine sand. This is play sand. It's very fine. You don't want stuff with big granules in it. And 1 part or 1/2 part perlite. And perlite is a naturally occurring medium found in the ocean. Okay, and this also acts as a soil conditioner and absorbs water. So why are we doing this? Okay, this is a way to get your plants into the ground. Now traditionally, most people probably plant directly the seeds into the garden. Or they go to a garden center, a greenhouse, and they buy plants already grown to a certain extent. Okay, this is a way for you to start your own plants, and it's a way to do it in an environmentally sound way. So that's why I use this. It's practical to me, it's environmentally sound, and it gives me a lot of control over the quality of the plants that I get. So that's why we use the soil blocker. This, when I bought this machine I think I got it from Johnny's or Fedco, which is another great source of tools and garden supplies and seeds in Maine. I think I paid $100 for one of these, but I've had this for probably 25 years. So these things will last a lifetime, okay? And there's various sizes. Let me just show you here before we get started. There's a 2-inch soil blocker, okay? That's a small version of it. Here's a bigger version of the 2-inch blocker, okay? Here's a 4-inch soil blocker. We'll make one of these, and I can start tomato plants in that and never have to transplant them. Or a 2.5-inch blocker that has 6 blocks in it. But we're just going to use the 1.5-inch blocks because what we're going to do is we're going to start spinach and lettuce today. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to take this peat and I'm going to sift it out, okay? Because the peat can have some sticks in it, and you might want to wear a respirator if you have sensitive lungs, because this stuff tends to get a little fine. Okay, and then I just take my hand and I notice that there are very few sticks in here. So this is pretty good batch. So, and then I'll just dump that into the garden or onto the lawn. Okay, I'm going to put another one in. Okay, I'll do another one. Now, at one time when I was farming commercially, I could make 12 to 1,500 soil blocks in an hour after I made the initial mixture. Okay, I doubt I could keep that pace up now. Okay, rather than going out and buying just a soil mix that's already done, this sort of gives you a sense of what goes into a good soil. Okay, now, peat moss tends to be acidic. Okay, so remember, it evolved in an anaerobic conditions, so it's very acidic. So we're going to add an agent to that's going to sweeten it up a little bit. Okay, so what is that? That's agricultural lime. Okay, this is ground up limestone, which was going to make this mixture a little bit more alkaline. Remember, you want the soil mixture to be slightly acidic, so between 6 and 7 on the scale, when 8 is alkaline, is good for vegetables. 6.5. Some fruits, like blueberries, like a more acidic soil. But for our conditions here, we're going to add maybe 3/4 cup of lime, ground up limestone. You don't want to use the pelletized variety in your soil mix because it'll create little rocky substances in your mix. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to mix this in. We're going to mix that in. We want to get that fairly uniform. Then we're going to add a half a bucket of sand. Okay, so remember, this is play sand, and the sand is going to help with drainage. So we're going to add half a bucket of sand, and we're going to have a half a bucket of perlite. Okay, we're going to add that. And of course, what do we need to do? We need to mix that in thoroughly so it's completely uniform. I mean, you want to use your shovel to sift it. Okay, so that's fairly uniform. Now we're going to add the soil to that, the compost. You can see, just looking at the color of this is much more nutrient dense than this. Like the darker the soil, the more organic matter that's in there that's nutrient dense. The more life that's in there, okay? Okay. All right. So let's mix that in. This can be quite a workout doing this, but again, if you don't want to go to the gym and lift weights, you could do something like this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to add a cup of blood meal. It sounds a little bit grotesque to people, but this is, again, waste. Our bodies have bones in them, blood in them. Animals have bones and blood, and their blood is very nutrient dense. It's rich in nitrogen, which makes sense because literally we are what we eat. So we eat a lot of plants and some animals, if you choose to do that. So this comes from slaughterhouses. This is blood meal, and you'll notice on here it says the numbers 1200. So those three numbers represent NPK, okay? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So the blood meal being 12 in nitrogen, it's high in nitrogen. It has no phosphorus, no potassium in it, okay? So if you just put blood meal in here, the nitrogen is going to give the plants lush growth, okay? But it might not help with the fruiting or the disease resistance or the health of the roots. We're going to do about 3/4 of a cup again of blood, dried blood, okay? So the next thing we're going to put in is rich in phosphorus. P indicating phosphorus, okay? So this is bone meal. So this is ground up bones. Years ago, when there was a shortage of phosphorus in Europe, in communities in Europe, farmers would often go and they dig up bones in cemeteries. Okay, sounds a little sacrilegious, but that's what they would do because the bones, again, being a waste material and rich in phosphorus, would be essential for plant growth, especially for the rooting and the fruiting of the plant and its disease resistance. Okay, so we're going to put about 3/4 of a cup of bone meal. Okay, so we're going to sprinkle that in. And then we're going to put in a cup. Let's see, so the K is from green sand. Okay, green sand is an ocean sand that's literally green. As you'll see, we're going to use 3/4 of a cup of green sand. Green sand, again, is rich in potassium, an essential nutrient. Okay, this is a batch for the gardening gods right here. This is some really great stuff. Okay, now the key with this is to make sure it's what? Uniform. You got to get this uniform. You want to get everything from the bottom, bring it to the top. I'm going to add water. Okay. You probably would be better off just measuring the exact amount. I tend to be a little bit edgy and just add it. And sometimes I add too much. So we're going to mix that in and see what happens with that amount. Okay.